But I also want to talk about AJ Styles before we wrap things up here today, because there was a busted open interview where Nick Nemeth, the former Dolph Ziggler, had a conversation about Vince McMahon and his opinion on AJ Styles. I want to give a shout out to WrestlingInc.com for the transcription of this, but Dolph said something like, when Styles was coming into WWE behind the scenes, and this is secondhand, but the boss was like iffy. The way he saw AJ is he still had that 80s mentality. If you're 6'5", okay, I can go with you. You look like the warlord, whatever the situation is. Now AJ is jacked, but he's not 6'5". At the time, I had heard that because of him having somewhat of a Southern twang to his voice, that basically he sees him like Heath Slater telling a joke. Oh, that's AJ Styles? Okay, I can't even take him seriously. Because that's his mentality from his brain from the 60s and 80s. Oh, he's not from New York. He doesn't have this accent we have. I kind of secondhand and firsthand heard AJ was fighting an uphill battle. Even already coming here with all his accolades, everything he's done, everybody knows what he's capable of. Whatever he did in his body of work while he was here, which by the way is effing fantastic, he won over the boss. And I think that's an interesting perspective and story, because we often hear that, guys who would complain, like respectfully JR would complain that Vince Russo and Vince McMahon thought he was too Southern. And Bruce Pritchard has said to Tony Schiavone, hey, Vince thinks you're too Southern. And I know when you took over WCW, maybe you felt like it was too regional. And so it felt like there was an anti-Southern bias, but I don't think any of us imagined that was still a thing. Gosh, what was it? 11, 12 years ago when AJ Styles came to WWE. Were you surprised to hear that perhaps Vince still had a anti-Southern bias even for AJ Styles?
Yeah, I do. Look, when I made the comments I made about Jim Ross being too representative of the South, was primarily because WCW was a Southern, effectively, in many respects, a regional promotion. Yeah, TBS was nationwide. Before you jump in my shit on social media to point that out, I'll save you the trouble. While they were distributed on TBS, distributed where they're in cable on TBS, and that was available around the country, the footprint for the viewing audience was definitely 75% Southeast, because that's where WCW was born out of Jim Crockett Promotions. Most of the people that came over from Jim Crockett, most of the people in WCW, when I got there, came from Jim Crockett Promotions, and were all typically from the South, because that's where Jim Crockett Promotions was based. So there was just a predominance of a Southern accent and a Southern presentation. And that was an issue for WCW, because my mission was to become more of a national promotion and not be so dominantly Southern. So that really was a problem for me. It's certainly not a problem in WWE. In fact, if I were there now, I would look at somebody like AJ with a Southern accent as an attribute, because he's different. He doesn't sound just like everybody else. That's a valuable asset today. 15 years ago, 20 years ago, yeah, I could understand the argument. In fact, I made it myself for the reasons I just explained. But I don't think that's it. Now, the size thing, perhaps Vince had opinion, subjective opinion, based on AJ's overall look. Could height have been an issue? I don't know. It didn't seem to bother Eddie Guerrero. Certainly didn't seem to hold Chris Benoit back. I don't think Rey Mysterio walks around with lifts in his shoes when he shows up at WWE. So I just don't think that that's real anymore. May have been 15, 20 years ago, 12 years ago, but I don't think that's the issue now. There may be other issues. I don't know what they could be. AJ's a phenomenal performer. He's an amazing performer. And to this day, even though he's gotten older, probably lost a beat or two in terms of his speed and some of his abilities in the ring, but he's made up for it in so many other ways. It really doesn't matter. I would be disappointed and very surprised if AJ doesn't have one really big run left in him over the next couple of years in WWE, because he's too solid of a performer.
Well, the reason this is coming up, I think, right now, Eric, is they did a thing on Monday with AJ on Raw on Netflix where maybe we weren't supposed to see it. Hey, this is, there's people in the back. There's a guy in the back who doesn't like me, and he doesn't want me here, and he doesn't want me to succeed. And he's shouting out Gallows and Anderson. So I perceived it to be, a work shoot, brother. And I think if they're playing off of the real life story that once upon a time Vince didn't like AJ, that could be interesting. I'm interested to see.
It's an outsider's perspective, right? If this is the opening act of Act 1, or the opening scene of Act 1, it's a good one, because I'm an outsider. I don't fit here. I'm an underdog, is what that really is saying. And damn it, I'm going to make you understand why I'm here. It's a great premise for a solid angle going forward. That's my take on it. I did see the clip. It was on social media, so I was able to see it. And I almost sent AJ a text, said, man, that was an awesome, awesome interview, because it was heartfelt. And it reminded me of AJ back in TNA when it was the homegrown stars kind of premise. That was a big thing for AJ back in the day at TNA. And it reminded me of that, which is why I smell story as opposed to a real issue.
SaveWithConrad.com.
My name's Daryl. Came from Massachusetts and I moved to Wisconsin. And there's a lot of people that might be asking, why go with Conrad? Why go with Supreme Lending? And let me tell you something, brother. I think about the credentials, the tag team partner that I'd be working with. First of all, we got the podfather himself, Conrad. How can you go wrong with that? And then also go on to SaveWithEric.com, which, who else could have kicked Vince's ass for 83 consecutive weeks? You can't beat that duo right there. But they did bring a secret weapon, and I didn't realize this because this was not advertised. I worked closely with Larry the Axe Thompson. And let me tell you, with all the stress with moving across the country with a large family that I have, it was reassuring to know that I had the enforcer at my back, handling questions from the other side of sellers, the other side with trying to find the right prices. He took care of all that. All I had to do was keep my eye on the prize and make it there to Wisconsin. They were absolutely fantastic. They checked in on me, especially Francis, very patient with me. I don't go through this process all the time, so I trusted the experts. I was able to call them. They called me if they had questions, and it felt like it was a personal arrangement. There was even a point in which, from the seller side, they wanted something else that wasn't part of the norm. Francis straight up told me, hey, we're loyal to you. We'll do whatever you want to do, and we'll make sure that you guys are taken care of. They came through. I made it to the dream. I'm the champion of my own destiny here. They were able to help pave the way for me and my family. I couldn't be more happy with the results. I went from having less than an acre to now 20 acres worth of land. They made that dream a reality. I'm Daryl, and I'm living in Friendship, Wisconsin, in my dream home, thanks to SaveWithConrad.com.
Animal lesson number 2129, Equal Housing Lender. SaveWithConrad.com.